You're listening to Forever Fierce with Catherine Grace O'Connell, only on LA Talk Radio.
Good morning. I am Catherine Grace O'Connell, your host of the Forever Fierce Revolution. And today I have a co-host with me, actually, that I wasn't really expecting to have, but I let him in. So I welcome you to the show. This is Michael Castagna, who is my business manager, my photographer, and actually, interestingly enough, was my caretaker during Lyme disease, which is why we brought him on the show and let him out of the office today.
Brought me out of retirement. I thought I was completely retired and moving on, but I guess I'm back on air.
Lucky guy. You got that radio voice, so you might be seeing him more often.
Autograph pictures just sent to info@CatherineGraceO.
Good luck with that. So I am so excited to introduce our guest today, who will be calling in from New York City. Amy Scher. It's Amy B. Scher. I was just laughing with her because I was calling her Amy B. Scher before, like Sonny and Cher. Amy Scher is the author of This Is How I Saved My Life, a true story of finding everything when you're willing to try anything. So this true story is one of a fiery young woman's heartwarming and hilarious journey that takes her from near death in California on a trip around the world. Along the way, she discovers a cultural mayhem, radical medical treatment, and most importantly, a piece of her life she never knew was missing. So like myself, Amy had Lyme disease. Her condition was labeled incurable and potentially terminal, deteriorating rapidly as she went on a search to save her own life. And she had visited everyone from the top medical clinics in Los Angeles to Mayo Clinic to Chicago, and then packed her bags and went across the world to India. Knowing the risks, she flew across the world anyway, and this book, This Is How I Saved My Life, is a powerful and uplifting story of sheer determination that will move anyone who believes in or doubts the existence of miracles and the infinite power of self-healing when it seems like all hope is lost. So I want to welcome Amy Scher to the show today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here. It's a delight already, even though I have to call in. I wish I was there in studio. You two sound like you're having so much fun.
We are. We're having a lot more fun than we did back in the day. That's for sure.
Good. Okay. I'm glad to be a part of it.
Yeah. So, Amy, you and I connected here, actually, right here in this very studio that I'm sitting in right now. I believe you were on Stephanie's show, and somehow, we started chatting about Lyme disease, I believe.
Yeah, we ended up in the elevator together, and you're the second person I've met in an elevator where I started discussing Lyme. It's pretty funny.
Second person, there you go. Well, Lyme is one of those weird things that you end up meeting all kinds of people through the conversation of Lyme disease. There's so many people that have Lyme that you wouldn't believe in a million years have Lyme. Have you found that to be true?
Yes, definitely. And I think so many people are living with Lyme disease and either maybe don't know they have it or don't know how to explain it to others. So maybe don't always say that they have it in conversation. They'll say, oh, I have a chronic illness, or I have fatigue, or they describe it in a different way.
Well, your book starts when you were 28 and on this adventure to India, but your journey through Lyme started a lot earlier than 28. Can you take us back to the very beginning of kind of this crazy journey and realizing that you had something that at that point you really didn't know what it was?
Sure. So my first symptoms started in my early 20s, and I had migraines and some chronic nausea and sort of just went to my regular doctor for it, who said, oh, it's probably nothing, maybe hormones, nothing to worry about. And over time, my body just really started deteriorating. Pretty soon I was nauseous all the time. No matter what I ate, it seemed like my body was having a negative reaction. And I was exhausted. I couldn't get through the day without several naps. And I had these migraines that would just come out of nowhere and, take me down. And I thought when you're in your early 20s, I kind of tried to figure out, am I drinking too much? Am I doing this? Am I not doing this? And it was kind of just like no doctor, could figure out what it was. And nobody seemed too worried, though, so I wasn't either. And it was in my mid-20s where I realized whatever was affecting me was something really, really big. I started having severe pain in my feet and legs, which then progressed to my upper limbs, my arms. And that's when doctors really started to say, okay, something's wrong. We still don't know what it is. But I, went from working full-time at Harley-Davidson as a marketing director to pretty much bedridden in a matter of months. And so that's sort of where my whole Lyme journey started.
Well, I think Mike can really relate to that story and having it happen so quickly, even though you know something is wrong. But once it's Lyme disease and it's diagnosed and I went under treatment, I was bedridden within a month.
Well, Amy, I think the critical part of this disease, especially from someone on the outside looking in and, all the listeners and viewers of this show, when they hear the word Lyme disease or I have Lyme disease, no one knows what it means because, quite frankly, it could mean 1,000 different things depending on who you are and how that disease is affecting you. How have you found, through having this and coming through the process of dealing with it, how do you explain to people what it is exactly you have? Because if you say, I have cancer, they understand that. If I have pneumonia, they understand that. No one really seems to understand Lyme.
Right. No, that's definitely true. And I have more clarity now that I've been well for years and, and kind of have seen, it can see it, I guess, more, I just see it with more clarity. And the way that I explain it now is that everybody manifests it in a different way. And that Lyme disease is a bacterial infection that infiltrates can infiltrate all of your systems or all parts of your body. And that explanation usually people get. So it's like, oh, well, it can, sort of burrow in your bone marrow or get in all your organs, glands, and muscles, which means that it can affect anywhere. And I think that we all have certain parts of our body that may be a little bit more susceptible than others, just like some people, tend toward migraines and some people tend toward throwing out their back when they're stressed. It's the same thing with Lyme disease, that if there are areas of injury or weakness in your body, you can tend to, manifest the most symptoms there. And for me, for whatever reason, it was really my nervous system. My nerves got very, very damaged through Lyme disease, which is part of the reason that I was bedridden. It was very difficult and painful to walk. But I also know people who have no pain with Lyme disease and they have severe fatigue, or they have, no fatigue but major digestive issues. So I think for everybody out there wondering, could I have it, or what does it look like, or what should I watch out for? It's sort of one of these things that can just consume you and it's hard to pinpoint one thing or one symptom. It's sort of a multi-symptom and multi-system disease, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Lyme disease, it is Lyme Disease Awareness Month, which is really just an opportunity to spread the message, because I think there's so many people out there like, you, Amy, or me, that I would imagine you knew something was really wrong with you, where you probably got a million different diagnoses, but there was something really at the root that doctors, specialists, all the people you went to were missing. So people in our audience, if, they have something that they kind of know is wrong with them, but aren't sure what it is, what advice would you give them?
Well, the first advice that I wish I knew, or the first sort of insight, was that everything in your body is connected. So for me, I was going to all these different specialists because I had digestive issues and I had migraines and I had pain and I had heart palpitations. So I was going to a cardiologist for the heart palpitations and, a neurologist for the nerve pain and a GI doctor for the GI issues. And for me, I wasn't seeing anybody that looked at the whole picture. I did go to the Mayo Clinic, but even there they were really focused on their different specialties. So when I was sick, really sick, it was 2006. Medicine has come so far. If it were me now, I would go to an integrative medicine doctor, I would go to a naturopath, or I would go to a functional medicine doctor. All of those types of doctors look at the whole picture, whereas strictly Western medicine or traditional medicine doesn't necessarily look at the whole picture. So for me, I feel like I had so many different diagnoses and I was treated for so many different diseases because I never had anybody who practiced the type of medicine that looks at the whole picture. And in that day, in 2006, it wasn't nearly as accessible as it is today. So that is my advice. If somebody has multi-system symptoms, to go to somebody who looks at how all of these different parts of your body actually work together, because you'll probably get to an answer much, much, much faster when somebody's looking in that way. Do you agree, Catherine? Is that what you've experienced as well?
I totally agree with you. I think there's definitely a wonderful place for Western medicine. I found more success in the Eastern approach, the integrative approach. As you said, Eastern integrative really blends Western, but also brings in this Eastern philosophy of really looking at the root and looking at the whole person. Now, I know you are also an energy worker. Now, were you an energy worker before this, or did this experience shift you and shift your life path into energy work?
Yes, this experience definitely shifted my life path. If somebody had suggested energy work to me, I'm a Virgo and very science-minded. If somebody would have suggested energy work to me before this, I don't know how I would have reacted. Not that I was totally closed off to, alternative means of healing, but I just hadn't had the experience of Lyme disease yet, and so I would have thought a lot of things were crazy that actually end up being normal after you've experienced Lyme disease. So I actually came to energy therapy or energy healing through my experience with Lyme disease, because working from an energetic standpoint, meaning addressing my energy body, which is what Ayurvedic medicine and traditional Chinese medicine is based on, brought me my permanent and complete healing when nothing else had prior, not even going all the way to India for a stem cell transplant. And so I became an energy therapist after I got well to help others sort of integrate working with their energy system into their medical treatment, because it brought me so much benefit. And now I've, worked with thousands and thousands of clients with Lyme disease, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, multiple sclerosis, all of those sort of chronic, labeled as chronic conditions. And boy, addressing the energy system and emotions in the body, emotional energy that gets stuck in trauma, really, really can bring about a very dramatic shift when nothing else is working.
Well, isn't that kind of the calling card of Lyme, is that it's just not a physical disease. It just doesn't affect your body or this system or that system. I know in Catherine's case, and again, this is like the blind man and the elephant, depends on what part you're looking at, but when I saw Catherine go through Lyme, it was far-reaching. It wasn't just an adrenal system. It wasn't just a muscular system. I mean, it affected her thought process, her rationality, her ability to use her cognitive functions. It was all of those things at once, and on any specific day, one symptom could be worse than the other. And as a person who has Lyme, and it sounds like you experienced some of that as well, how does that affect your mental state and really for a while probably prevent you from getting to that positive point, like I can lick this thing?
Yeah, definitely. So it's interesting because I think that Lyme disease itself can affect, I know that Lyme disease itself can affect your brain. And so Lyme disease itself, that means it can affect your emotions and your thought process. But then also, I believe that your beliefs and your thoughts and your emotional, or your mentality and your emotional well-being prior to Lyme can also be a contributing factor to how your body responds. So what I know now is that Lyme disease is not just physical, that plenty of people get bitten by ticks and are transferred the bacteria, and plenty of people don't end up like Catherine and I ended up bedridden. So I believe now, looking back, there was certain mentalities and beliefs and negative emotional patterns or unhealthy emotional patterns I had that perhaps, were stressing my immune system, my nervous system, that sort of created a perfect storm so that when I got bitten, my body wasn't in the best place it could be in to fight the infection. And I think that's
probably Lyme,
something.
Lyme seeks out those emotional weaknesses, don't you think? I mean, it really finds those chinks in your armor, and that's where it attacks.
Well, I think you're more vulnerable
Yeah.
when you have an emotional sort of predisposition. I had a background of trauma and abuse, and I would say definitely that that part of my personality to be more vulnerable to emotional sort of swings, should we say, or taking things. I could be more sensitive. What I found in the many people that I have spoken to with Lyme disease is there is a vibrational energetic pattern, and they tend to be very sensitive, very sort of giving, compassionate, loving, but not necessarily to themselves. Would you say that's true, Mike?
I don't know if you can, extrapolate across everybody. I think.
Not
I think
universal,
both.
but in
I
the
think both of you
conversations,
gals view this from exactly the same place. That if there's something that's occurred in your life that creates some sort of traumatic response or a weakness in your armor, and whether that's your immune system or just your emotional system, Lyme seems to gravitate towards that and either trigger it or make things worse. And that's what I saw. I think. Watching you, and it's very similar to Amy's story, where the deterioration was really rapid. I mean, just like unbelievably rapid.
Amy, how do you feel?
Right,
about
and
that?
in that, yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree with both of you. I think that our emotions. It's scientifically proven now that our emotions affect our physical body, and so if we have trauma, if we have a pattern of being critical or not loving to ourselves, or quote unquote too sensitive, or I don't want to say too compassionate, but if we don't have that self-compassion with ourselves, but we only have it with others, we take too much on. All of those things are not healthy for our bodies. Our mind and body are connected. So I think that there's that aspect. Then I also think what Mike was saying was, a little bit earlier, was that and I actually can't remember who was saying it now, but it's hard to be positive when you're in that chronic illness state. Like, that's really, really hard because you don't feel good. It's hard to stay positive. It's hard to think yourself out of negative thoughts. It's hard. Your cognitive processing isn't the same. And so I think that working on all of this through Lyme is a huge part of healing, is, creating that positive mentality. And, so many people say to me, and again, I work with thousands of people now, so many people say to me, I was fine until the tick bit me. And it's like, no, because there's so many people who are bitten by a tick and then they're still fine. These things that we're talking about, these emotional energies, these frequencies, vibrations, those things are there long before a tick comes and bites you. So you can't heal completely without going back and cleaning up sort of your energetic vibration and those emotions as well. That's where I find the complete healing comes in, is addressing the body, mind, and spirit.
Well, I found it really helpful, which I think we're talking really the same thing, and to kind of ground it in language that our audience can understand. Energy really is, let's be simple, it's our focus, right? So when we shift our focus, our energy, our focus over from illness to wellness, we set a new kind of our whole intention going forward to create a new self in the future, right, Amy? Is that what you would say? Like, did you shift your focus over time from focusing on illness and suffering and fear and desperation and over to, I can do this. I can get well. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes. It wasn't the first place I went. I went through many years of just being miserable and I always had hope, but I was still really living in sort of a victim mentality state. Like, this tick did this and the bacteria is killing me and da-da-da-da. And then at some point I just think I went, this isn't going to work. Like, this isn't working. This isn't helping me. And so I did shift. And I think, my epiphany was that I was focusing on Lyme and symptoms and what to eat and what not to eat and which supplements and all of this so much that I realized I was focusing on the one thing that I didn't want, which was Lyme. My whole life was revolving around Lyme. And some of it was justifiable because I was sick and I was bedridden, and what else could I do? But we have to find small ways to shift our focus away from the thing we don't want, because otherwise it does consume us, right? And the body needs that shift in energy or vibration or focus, however you want to say it, to gain some momentum in the direction of healing.
Right. I think Mike would definitely agree with that, because he watched that shift in me.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and you were a great case study for this, where, I'm sure you resonate with this, Amy. I mean, I would go into her bedroom in the morning to check on her, see how she was, and literally to check her breathing, because I really thought we were to the point where, you know what, I'm going to probably walk in one morning and she's not going to be breathing. And the day would move to, she'd struggle with her computer. She'd get the computer, start Googling Lyme disease and protocols and looking for things. And it was almost like a 100% focus on being sick. And I know she's going to share this story with you, but Catherine's inflection point was when she said, why am I thinking about being sick anymore? How about thinking about being well? And that took, it took a catalyst to get her to do that. But once she did that, and this was not an overnight change, but the path of the disease had an inflection point, and she began to think in terms of wellness rather than illness. And I know that she can share more of that, but.
Well, I know, Amy, I think, as Mike said, you can resonate with this. My daughter would come over, and I would have all the, homeopathic protocols laid out, and just everything. The house was, taken over by Rife machines and far infrared saunas and homeopathic remedies and what I couldn't eat in the refrigerator. And, I mean, supplements laid out everywhere and timed according to, I've got to take this digestive enzyme. It was insanity. And like Mike said, my only downtime, if I wasn't, collapsed asleep or, falling down from seizures, I was researching, what everybody else on the Better Health Guy, what did this person do and how did this person survive, or ordering this book from Amazon or this cure supplement. And my days just revolved around this illness. And that's what I see with many, many people with Lyme disease, and they get stuck in illness and have such a hard time letting go of the illness and letting go of the story.
Absolutely. And I used to have, I mean, it just sounds so familiar. I used to have the spreadsheets of what to take, which supplement to take away from this supplement, and 2 hours before that supplement. And it's complete crazy making. And what I wish somebody would have told me in the very beginning is, you'll never do it all perfectly. Don't even try. Nothing nothing makes or breaks you. I've never, ever met one person with Lyme who found a miracle cure in one thing. So when I work with my clients and students of my online program now, and they're just in the beginning of this journey, I always say to them, trust me that if there's a miracle cure for Lyme that works for everybody, you will hear about it without scouring message boards. But in all of my years of sort of, being connected in the world of, Lyme and chronic illness, I've never found one thing that works for everybody. But people are so afraid they're going to miss out on this thing that doesn't even exist, that they then do what we did, which is constantly Google and, excuse me, and nobody ever finds anything positive, because the people who heal are out in the world. They're not usually on those message boards, right? And so I just wish somebody would have told me in the beginning, there's not a perfect cure. You won't find it. You don't have to do everything perfectly. I remember at one point I was on 44 supplements a day, and I said to my Lyme doctor, who's a fantastic physician, I said to him, how do we know that all of these are working? It suddenly occurred to me that I was gagging these down every day, and I said, how do we know that all of these are working? He said, we don't. And I was like, wait, I'm taking 44 pills a day and we don't really know they're working? And he's like, we don't. There's no way for us to know. So I said to him, well, can I stop taking some? He said, sure, stop taking them, and if you don't feel any worse, you're fine. And it was such a big point for me to realize that I could be okay without this stuff. So much of it is just get in check, and we can be okay and go through this our own way and heal anyway. Not that I'm, of course, recommending everybody nobody out there stop taking their supplements without talking to their doctor, but it was a big wake-up call for me that nothing makes you or breaks you. You know what I mean? It's not about finding the right thing and doing everything perfectly.
Well, isn't that one of the most frustrating parts about Lyme disease, in that for almost every other disease you can think of, there is a medication that either cures you or reduces your symptoms, or that is standard practice for a doctor to give you, that either cures you or helps you.
A standard treatment or protocol that doesn't exist with Lyme.
Exactly. And Lyme, there is none.
Well, most people are out there self-treating. So I love this. The Ayurvedic doctor that treated you in India, she sounds so freaking lovely. Dr. Shroff, is that how I pronounce her name? Shroff?
Yeah, and she was Dr. Shroff, and she was the stem cell doctor.
Yeah, she
and
was very Western medicine, but also because of the culture in India, really also, subscribed to and believed in, your mind is a huge part of it, which was shocking for me when I got there because I wasn't in any state to be listening to that. Right. Well, she really believed in balance, and I think you talk in the book. It says the list that you had, like over the past years, my brain was programmed with messages like dairy's bad because it causes inflammation, sugar feeds the Lyme bacteria, carbs are evil. And while some of this has truth to it, being ridiculously strict about my diet only causes me more intense stress. Then Dr. Shroff saw the list. She came into my room with it and asked, but what about your healthy cells? They need some sugar. Dairy is not bad for them. Carbs are okay in moderation. Each night, you can have a small amount of red wine and chocolate. You need some pleasure too. All I could think was, are you trying to kill me?
I think that's what my clients think now when I say it's not going to kill you to have a little ice cream. I promise. Isn't that funny, though, how your perspective changes? I mean, I was the first Lyme patient at that clinic, so when I went in there and gave her the list, I mean, if you gave a doctor, a Lyme doctor, a naturopath, or any doctor here a list like that, they would kind of just go, okay. And she was shocked. She was like, what are you doing to yourself? It looked so crazy to her. And to me, so normal, which was a problem that I thought that was okay and normal,
Well, I think Mike can definitely relate to that deprivation. I mean, I can't have this, I can't have this.
Well, it's almost like you felt like you had to punish yourself because if you did anything pleasurable that was, for me it would be like have some pasta and meatballs. Like that's probably going to kill you, but that's really not what was going on.
Well, it's not necessarily conscious in our own deprivation. It's everything we're being told, be it, even the integrative doctors said to me, you can't have this, you can't have that, you can't have this, you can't have that. And so what I found, Amy, which I think you can really relate to, there is an energy of deprivation, which is what this doctor is referring to. And to me, I found the energy of joy from adding those things in. Once I started loosening my diet and going back to having a milkshake or having a bagel.
It's more like once you relaxed into life. I mean, you left life.
Yes.
Okay, you left life. You did. You didn't. You had a regiment. That is what you had.
Right, and Amy can relate to that. This whole shift in our energy from one of fear and deprivation, desperation, to one of bringing some joy in.
Yeah, and I think Mike really hit on it with the word relax, because I use that over and over with clients. Relaxing into your life is probably the most important thing because the benefits to your immune system and your nervous system are far, far, far greater than not eating sugar or not eating gluten.
Right, because relax says I have less stress.
Relaxing is healthier.
Yeah. Relax means less stress. Stress, I saw
Absolutely.
a direct correlation with stress levels and the severity of the Lyme symptoms with Kath.
Yes, and that's absolutely true for any diagnoses. I mean, we're talking about Lyme, but that's true for anything. That's true for, any kind of illness. Stress is not healing. That's all it is. So if you are trying to use a protocol that is stressful, forget it. You might as well eat the ice cream because you're counteracting everything you're doing, and it's just not worth it. It's not. It doesn't work that way.
I 100% agree, and I found immense healing once I returned to life, added joy back in, started eating all those things I wasn't supposed to eat.
All right, let's talk about the different parts. India. I want to hear about India.
Oh, yeah.
Because, how many people say, I'm sick, I'm going to go to India? How do you get to that?
Well, first you got to have parents that raise the money. Amazing, loving parents.
But that's a big jump, so I'd like to hear that process.
All right, let's talk about, let's jump into this, not your eat, pray, love. You say in the book it's not your eat, pray, love moment, although many people would probably relate it to that. It was really your survival. This was to live.
Yes, so I had exhausted basically all treatment in the United States. I had been to the best Lyme doctor in the United States. I had been to the Mayo Clinic. I had been to USC and UCLA. And I mean, all the big names. I had been to all those places, and I had done very aggressive Lyme disease treatment. And nothing was working as much as I needed it to in order to survive. And so I found out about this stem cell clinic in India that was experimental. It was only for incurable patients. My own Lyme doctor told me that it would probably kill me. I mean, he told me not to go. And I went anyway. It was expensive. I think it's more now, but it was $30,000 for 8 weeks, which included the treatment and room and board, food and everything. And there's probably, people out there thinking, oh my gosh, that's a crazy amount of money. And then there's people like me thinking, oh, well, that's expensive, but $30,000, I had already spent much, much more on various treatments that weren't covered by insurance prior to going to India. So I thought for $30,000, if I was cured, that would be quite the bargain in the end. And so my parents helped me raise the money. We didn't have it. I went to India, and my mentality was that I'm going to get the stem cells. I'm not going for an eat, pray, love like journey. It was life or death. I'm going to save my life, and I'm going to come back and get on with my life. And how wrong I was, because we usually are when we're that intent on anything. But I went to India. I got the treatment, many, many ups and downs physically and emotionally. When you are sick, and you can both probably speak to this, you have your regimen, you have your protocols, you have a very small life within the confines of what you can do, probably in your house. And I got on a plane not knowing if I would survive, and I went to another culture, another hospital, another medical system, people who didn't know what Lyme was really about, and I went there to try to get a new immune system. So that shift out of my comfort zone was very, very difficult. And thank goodness, though, because I don't think I would have healed the same way at home, because I needed to be pushed out of my comfort zone. I needed Dr. Schroff to point out to me that the ways that I was trying to heal, were unhealthy. And so I went through 8 weeks of treatment there, very, very life-changing, improved greatly. Came home and thought, great, now I licked this Lyme thing, I'm just going to move on with my life. And I think that, what I've realized now is that people who experience Lyme disease are people who need something like Lyme disease to make them change something in their life, or everything in their life. We're not one of those people that can get something that has a cure or a treatment and just move on. It's not meant, that isn't the path we're meant for. I don't know how you feel about that, Catherine, but I feel like I needed to be shaken up so bad, and Lyme disease is the perfect thing to do that, because there is no easy cure.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is a lot like me. I'm used to powering through pretty much anything, put my mind to it, and boom, it's done. Well, Lyme isn't quite like that. What the analogy I used was, I was completely bedridden for a year with these seizures, and much like you in the book, I'd lift my arm in the morning and I couldn't even lift it, or I'd try to get up and stand up in the bed and I'd fall right down. I'd be like, okay, that's it. I guess I'm laying in bed for the day. But what I found was, in the end, it was my greatest blessing, because it forced me to stop moving. It forced me to not be able to push my way through it. I had to go inwards, and I had to clear a lot of the pain and the darkness and the shadows and the wounded inner child, and really look at myself and do some excavation that was, and including my mindset, my attitude, mostly about myself. I didn't like myself. There was a lot of self-hatred in there, and I know you can relate to that, because in your book you talk a lot, very openly and courageously and vulnerably, about what your inner belief system and inner attitude about yourself was. So that was me. I was forced inner excavation.
Yes, and that is definitely my experience as well. And when I came home from India, I was doing well for about a year, and then I relapsed. Not to the point that I was when I went, but my symptoms were coming back, and my tests were showing, Epstein-Barr virus again, and food allergies again. All these things that had gone away were coming back. And that's when, luckily, I was out of money, out of patience, and completely disgusted with, chasing cures all over the world, that I decided to turn inward. And when I did that, when I cleared these emotions that were stuck in my body from my whole life, and I didn't have anything traumatic happen. I didn't experience abuse, neglect, and I like to tell people that now so that they understand that something as simple as being too hard on yourself can really weaken your entire body, and not to be scared of it, but just to show people that, look at the patterns in your life. Are there things that, do you put too much pressure on yourself? Are you, do you take on the problems of the world? Those things really can kind of, over time, affect your nervous system, your immune system, your whole, your adrenal glands, all of your systems. And so it doesn't take big trauma. And I think probably if I would have heard that earlier in the game, I would have thought, oh, maybe I should look inward. But because I had heard so much about trauma and I didn't relate to trauma, I had two very, very loving parents and couldn't find, anything to complain about from growing up, really, except for what I thought were kind of normal things. I think I would have come to this sooner, but it is those beliefs and patterns and just emotions. I had a pattern of stuffing everything down. That was my biggest pattern. Was I just didn't like to talk about my emotions. And I grew up with a therapist as a father, so there was no good reason, but I just didn't. And I think over time, stuffing all of that stuff in my body just sort of broke it. And I got to a place where when the Lyme disease came along, it was just a perfect storm. And so when I went inside and worked on myself from that place of just sort of repairing my spirit and lifting myself up, that's when I got completely well, and I've never relapsed again. It's been almost a decade. And so, that's kind of, what I experienced on the whole, and just bringing more joy, not being so hard on myself, and all the things we've been talking about. It's incredible how those things are free, but they are the things we try to work on last.
I love that. I started working with a therapist. I had given a speech recently, and this therapist, I mentioned this quote that from this therapist who shared this brilliant sort of wake up, those aha moments Oprah talks about. The quote was, "The way we speak to ourselves is far more important than speaking up for ourselves." And that was one of those just moments where I was like, wow, okay. It's so important. I think as women, we get in this unconscious internal patterning of beating ourselves up, be it doesn't have to be, like you said, an abusive, traumatic past. It can be a pattern of perfectionism, a pattern of just our cultural pressure on women to, look perfect and be smart and be all these things. And so I know I would wake up in the morning and I would look at myself and I would start in this unconscious pattern of just beating myself up internally and saying all these nasty things. And I had to really wake up and go, wow, this is not how I'm going to heal.
Right, because our cells sort of absorb all of that, and what body is going to respond well to any healing modality when you're telling your body or yourself you're not worth it in some capacity? Like, those are so contradictory that you're not in alignment with healing when you're having those patterns. And so many of us have been doing that since we've been little for whatever reasons. We're just sensitive and hard on ourselves from birth, and we had that pattern, or we heard someone else be really hard on ourselves. So, that becomes part of us, and sometimes we don't even realize we're doing that until we hear people talking about it, which is why it's so important for us to be talking about it today.
I love that. And I know you, like you said, you work with, a ton of different clients, and many with Lyme, many with chronic illness, but just many women who are, struggling for whatever reason. So we have an audience filled with women out there, many looking to really fiercely reinvent themselves, or maybe they're, interested in digging deep and telling themselves a new story. So what 3 things could you share with our audience members to help them maybe shift that inner dialogue or become more aware of the inner dialogue?
Sure. So the first thing is, which I think we've done a great job of here today, is just realizing you can't go on like this. Like, it has to be a rule that you will no longer beat yourself up because it's not working. And so I think coming to that realization is really important, and making a pact with yourself that you'll try not to do it. You won't be perfect at first, because you could have been practicing it for, 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 years, however many, years you've been doing it, but making a pact that now that you're aware you're going to try to shift it is really important. And then I think finding a new dialogue. So I always tell people you're not going to be able to go from I suck, I never do anything right to I'm a perfect angelic being. I always see these affirmations that are like I'm pure love or I'm pure light, and that's never going to work for somebody who feels like they're the bottom of the barrel, So I always say when you find yourself with a negative thought, try to find the next least negative thought you can. So maybe if you tell yourself something like, I'm the worst person in the world, you can then try to start telling yourself, well, I'm not the worst person in the world.
Second worst.
And you do it with the second worst, right?
Start
and maybe
somewhere.
Tomorrow you'll think you're the third worst. We're laughing, but this is the energy that we need to heal. We need to lighten the heck up on ourselves. And so this is the way that I have my clients do it. Don't try to go from I'm miserable and I'm the worst in the world to I'm love, light, and a perfect angelic being. Like your brain's going to be like, what? So just try to go to the least negative thought and just work from there and just baby step your way to positivity. That's the best way to do it.
That's what I have.
And then
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go in. I was just going
to.
Yeah. Sorry, you go.
Either interrupt or don't interrupt.
Yeah, okay. So let me tell you this. It reminded me of my master's program. They talk about this spiritual bypass that people do. So, like you were just saying, to go from like, oh my God, I'm the worst person in the world to I'm the best. It's just a spiritual bypass, and you're going to get yourself in trouble again.
Yes, completely. And what happens when you try to talk yourself into something you don't believe is true on any level is in the back of your brain you're going, I'm not an angelic being. I'm the worst. And so you actually end up, when you use affirmations that you don't resonate with at all, you actually end up ingraining the opposite of what you're trying to do, if that makes sense.
Because that's what you're really thinking about.
It's really important not to try to stretch.
It makes perfect sense.
Let me ask you both the same question.
One more. I think you had one more. Amy, did you have one more?
Was that only two? I thought that was three.
I
just wanted to complete. Yeah, I just wanted to complete. I wanted to complete. The third one is basically to honor your emotions. That's something that's really important, because what happens is when we don't honor how we feel, when we try to talk ourselves out of it, that stuff gets stuck inside. So just saying, you know what, even if just to yourself, I'm really mad at this person, even though they didn't mean to hurt my feelings, I'm really mad, and letting yourself have that moment. Otherwise, all those emotions you stuff get internalized, and they become part of your sort of inner landscape. So just acknowledge how you feel when you feel it, and you'll move on a lot.
So don't wear the facade, particularly with yourself.
Don't put the happy face on and suppress or repress those emotions.
So we talked about how you guys got through that first stage of Lyme, which I think is only the half the battle, which is doing the inner work, realizing what's going on inside of you, clearing a lot of the negative stuff, which I think, and just from your experience, gets you back to a baseline. But it really doesn't light the engine that gets you going. And what I sense is from both of you, and I know this happened to Catherine, at some point you need the positivity of a passion. You need the ability to create something. You need the ability to say to yourself, I'm back to a baseline. Now I can go do things. Because it sounds stupid, but Lyme disease may have been the best thing that ever happened to Catherine, because if you had asked her, would she have her own talk show and blog and touch so many women 3 years ago, she would have said, no way could I do that. So did you find, Amy, a passion or something to cling to that really kind of lifted you into not just at a baseline, but really into healing and creation and being strong and powerful?
Or stepping into who you truly are.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is interesting because I had also had the doctor in India say, tell me, you need to find a passion. You need to find something you care about. And for me, I internalized that and was like, oh gosh, now I have to heal and I have to find a passion. Like I put that on my to-do list. So what I ended up doing was just, for me, what I really wanted to do was have a normal life. Like I went back to work in marketing, which is where I started after I healed. And then it was after a little while that I got into healing and realized that it was my passion to help others. So So I do think it's very, very important to have a bigger purpose you're working toward. But I do like to tell people that it's okay if your biggest purpose is just to be happy. That's enough of a purpose. And your secondary purpose of helping others or creating art or whatever can come through that. But our biggest purpose should always be to be in alignment with ourselves, to be happy, to be joyful. And I think, Catherine, what probably happened with you is you got in touch with that and aligned with that, and then spread out and sort of really were able to bring that into the world. But a lot of people internalize, I need a passion as another thing to do. And I think that does come with time. And so just setting a goal of I want to be happy. I want to feel free. I want to be able to relax and not beat myself up. I think from those things, it's easier to be clear about what your true passion is, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes perfect sense. And I think for me, what I realized in the end was how much I was really depriving myself, which was, again, sort of a metaphor for Lyme. There's so much deprivation in Lyme. I was withholding joy, passion, purpose, creativity, all these things I told myself I couldn't have, I couldn't be, I couldn't. And I was really the barrier to myself.
Yes, and I think that happens. I mean, there's so many quotes and stuff about, get out of your own way, and we don't always know how to do that. But Lyme or other illness experiences give us an opportunity to release all that is no longer serving us. And if most people are like us, I'm guessing that nobody's ever going to stop their life and say, you know what, I should let go of all that's no longer serving me. It takes something that stops us in our tracks and makes us sit with ourselves and all the uncomfortable things we've been ignoring to really transform our lives. And so I think in that we can be thankful for the opportunity that illness can bring.
Well, there's a quote in your book that I love. What you say is, chronic illness does not delete who you are. It covers up who you are. It lays upon you hundreds of pounds of useless weight, crushing something deep inside. Being sick does not change the person you are, but it does make being that person a whole lot harder.
Mm-hmm.
It's really powerful.
And our job is to uncover ourselves through this process. And it's not always easy, as all of us, here know, but I always tell clients it's not always easy, but it's always worth it. That I really, really, truly believe.
It's always worth it because you are worth it in the end, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So now there is a parallel between you and Elizabeth Gilbert. Elizabeth Gilbert went on her Eat, Pray, Love adventure, and she started that adventure leaving a relationship that she was no in love with her husband, and she jetted around and then met another man. But then inevitably she met the love of her life. I think it was this year, who was a woman. And you started the book with a boyfriend in a relationship, ending that relationship and jetting off to India. But while in India, it sounds like you met the love of your life. Who was
I did.
So please share. I mean, it sounds like you guys are really happy together, and you were able to discover something else about yourself. And I had my previous relationships had always been men, and I was perfectly happy with that. And then when I was in India for a subsequent trip, not the first trip when I was healing, but a couple of years later, I met Charlotte. And I think only because I had been through so much and was less judgmental about myself and was more open to all the possibilities in life, and had learned through Lyme in part to be open to everything and look at what makes you happy instead of what you think it should be, and stop beating yourself up. I realized that I was in love with Charlotte. And, I say this in the book.
Did you meet Charlotte in
India?
Was she in India?
yes.
She was in India. Thank you for saying. I forget not everybody's read the book.
Yeah.
She was in India. She was visiting her mother, who was a patient at the same stem cell clinic. And I was able at that time in my life, like I would not have been several years before, I was able to just take the experience for what it was, which was that I fell in love with a woman. And prior, I had always analyzed every thought I had in my brain and every emotion and tried to reason with myself and talk myself out of things that I was scared of. And this time, in a total opposite of my typical MO, I just decided that love was love and I wasn't going to pick it apart. For the first time in my life, I wasn't going to psychoanalyze something that was happening. I was just going to let it be. And we got married a few years later. We've been married 7 years now, and it's one of the biggest blessings that came from my Lyme journey. You just never know what will happen.
I'm curious about that because, well, first of all, if I went to India, my deepest relationship probably would have been with a bowl of curry. But
I had those too.
I would imagine. Okay, let's go through the whole process of meeting someone and a romance starts, right? If you've been heterosexual your whole life and all of a sudden you're having these feelings with a person of the same sex, how do you know what they're thinking? I mean, what was that experience like for you? Was there a lot of trepidation or like, oh my God, what's going on here?
Well, she had mentioned in sort of not passing, but in casual conversation that she was gay. So I knew that she had been gay her whole life. And so at least I didn't have to wonder, like, is she attracted to women? That made it a whole lot easier for me. But there was still a lot of fear on my part initially, like, should I say something? Is this really what I'm feeling? Maybe I'm wrong. And then, like I said, I just decided not to entertain myself in that way in which I had done previous. With everything, I had doubted myself. And I had finally just gotten to a point in my life where I was like, I can just let something be easy for once. I don't have to complicate something that's not complicated to start with. And so I just decided I was going to see what happened. And I remember the moment I realized I was in love with her, I looked up to the sky, kind of at the universe, and just said, are you effing kidding me? Like, after all I've been through, now I'm going to have this sort of hurdle of, I'm falling in love with a woman, and what am I going to tell my family? And then I just didn't engage in it. I just kind of laughed at it all and decided, well, let's just see what happens. And I think in part because I just let myself feel how I felt, it all went pretty darn smoothly.
Back to that relaxing into yourself and really allowing yourself be who you are. And you guys will have to read the book just to really get this whole story. But on page 231, it says, Charlotte is my coming home. It's not because she provides for me what I need in order to be happy or what I can't provide for myself. It's because she says in every single way, I accept you. So beautiful.
Yep, which helped me continue to say it to myself, which was what I needed to do all along. So, and I think, if we don't say that to ourselves first, we don't recognize it when somebody else says it either,
So in the end, the key to healing really is self-acceptance, isn't it, Amy?
Yes. You can't convince your body to heal physically unless you first convince it that it's worth all of what you're going through and all of what you're trying to do for it.
That's beautiful. Well, we are so delighted to have had you on the show today. And your book, This Is How I Saved My Life, a true story of finding everything when you are willing to try anything, which clearly you did. Please let our audience know where they can get to your book, where they can find you if they want to, work with you and learn some of these wonderful energy techniques and all of the incredible things that you share with your clients.
Sure. So again, the book is This Is How I Save My Life, and it's in present tense because I think we're always saving our lives in one way or another. And people can find out more about the book and more about me on howISaveMyLife.com or my main website, which is Amy B. Scher, SCHER.com. And my book is in all major bookstores, Barnes & Nobles, wherever books are sold, and of course on Amazon, where you can buy anything in the whole wide world.
Isn't that the truth? Well, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Before we do that, this is L.A., Amy, and whenever you write a book, someone like Steven Spielberg's probably going to come and ask for the movie. Okay? So
yes.
Who do you want to play your role when this movie gets made?
Okay.
Okay, so, and I cannot believe
and Tom Hanks is not available.
I already have her picked out. Mandy Moore. Definitely, 100% Mandy Moore.
Oh, interesting. I could see that, Mandy Moore.
Yes.
That's a good one.
Yes, Mandy Moore. She's my the dream person to play me. So if it's meant to be, it will be, right?
Yeah, put it on your vision board.
I'll send an email to her later today.
Yeah, we'll set that intention. Well, thank you so much, Amy. You are such a delight, and I know our audience, you've given them incredible suggestions on how to live their best life and how to really accept themselves and love themselves. So thank you for being with us today. Everybody go, this is how I saved my life, and I know this guy helped save mine. So anyway, thank you for being with us, Amy, and have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you.
All right. Well, go Irish Photog. It was really fun. This was definitely a lot more fun than when I was hanging out in Lyme disease and seizures.
Definitely, you were.
I was a ball of laughs. I got to tell you guys.
You were an albatross, but we'll let that be.
All right.
Look how you've turned out.
Look how I've turned out. All right, everybody get this book. This is How I Saved My Life. It has actually a quote from Elizabeth Gilbert. Who doesn't love Elizabeth Gilbert? Eat, Pray, Love. Amy Scher is a brave warrior and a wonderful writer. It's an awesome book, an awesome journey, and we wish you guys the absolute best in health and self-love and self-acceptance. So cheers, beauties. On that note, stay fierce.